This module is the opportunity to explore some of the technical aspects of Service Manager. We provide a description of the Service Manager's file system and the role and type of each file. We consider the key configuration files, INI, SMD, and SMC, and the role they play. We look at the role of Service Manager Dialog and its configuration. Finally, we briefly consider networking and communication aspects and the role of the CP in the events. First, as for other components, the Service Manager logs are found in the temp directory. The Service Manager's other files are in the bin directory. In this example, we're using the Unix file system, which can be split into 5 groups. Its Windows counterpart isn't all that different. In blue, we have configuration files. uc.sml exists for most AA components and stores the dictionary for multi-language support. We won't cover this. The INI file is the main configuration file. The SMD file contains defined commands that convert the technical properties of a component, say an agent or server process, into a service. The command file, or SMC, is not found in the initial Service Manager installation package. It's created dynamically by configuring services in the dialog. uc4.smc stores the Autostart properties of services. In red, we have libraries. They're identified by the SO text string in their names, and we won't dwell on these. In green, we find the executables, namely the Service Manager itself, and UCBS-MCL, which is the command line equivalent. In purple, we have the Automic SM Autostart script for Unix. This script can be copied in the /etc/init.d directory, and once configured and adapted to your environment, will autostart Service Manager at boot. Finally, in orange, we have the PEM certificates. As long as you deploy the CAPKI encryption tool before starting the Service Manager and agents, certificate file information will be populated automatically. That includes the PEM files, but also the information in the INI file. This is out of scope for this course. Just make sure you install CAPKI before doing anything, or restart your components if you do it after. When you install Service Manager on Unix, the 2 configuration files should be renamed so that the .ori string is removed. ucbsmgr.ini is the main configuration file. It contains a number of sections for logs, traces, and more. We focus on 3 important sections. The first is the port. The default is set to 8871. The certificate section contains the name of the encryption certificate. Once you started Service Manager, an empty PEM section means CAPKI is either not installed or isn't functioning. Finally, you find the destination section. The word appended by default is UC4 and should match the names of the SMD and SMC file. Say we use another word like Automic. The files would need to be called automic.smc and .smd. When started, the Service Manager executable checks the INI for the destination and invokes the SMD and SMC files. It sources their information to drive service definition and Autostart. Destination files are uc4.smd and SMC by default. The definitions file defines services based on information associated with the technical components, like executable and file path, for example. In the case of a server CP process, the SMD file defines a service based on the available information when Service Manager is started. The define command creates a service for that CP process, which means it can be controlled by Service Manager. The command file contains instructions for auto-starting services by ways of the create command. Pauses can be inserted between each service start with the wait command and a parameter in seconds. Automic does not recommend creating and updating SMC files manually. Instead, these Autostart properties should be defined in the Service Manager dialog. Doing so creates the file dynamically and inserts the appropriate create and wait commands. We have 2 executables, UCBSMGR and UCBSMCL. The first is the Service Manager executable. When we run this, Service Manager starts. The second is the command line equivalent. When starting Service Manager, the executable checks the INI file, finds SMC and SMD files, and manages the services accordingly. The Service Manager can be set to auto-start at boot. For Unix, Automic provides a script called Automic SM in the bin directory. Copy this script to the /etc/init.d directory, configure the script to your own needs based on your environment, and Service Manager starts automatically at boot. Note that when you use the Automic Automation 1 installer on Unix, it does it for you. This is what the script looks like on a 1 installer installation. On Windows, we use the Service Manager executable to install a Windows service, which can be set to automatic. This is by far the most effective way to start and stop the Service Manager on Windows and to auto-start it at boot. We mentioned this earlier, turning a component into a service on a host means that host needs a Service Manager since the tool only works locally. Let's take this setup. We have a server on Unix and an agent on Windows. The server's Service Manager cannot control the Windows agents. However, Service Manager has a dedicated interface called the Service Manager Dialog, which is only available on Windows platforms. It has its own directory. Our customers commonly host servers on Unix and then control that Service Manager with a Dialog installed on a remote Windows computer. To configure this, we use the Dialog's INI file to reference all the hosts whose Service Managers we're planning on reaching. We use the host name list section. Once you've done this, you'll find a drop-down menu that lets you select different hosts. Our purpose is not to drill too far down networking aspects, but to provide a simple overview of the communication processes and the default ports. Assuming our server is on a Unix host and we have one Windows agent, we show the processes and that agent. Each host has a service manager whose role is limited to local components. The Dialog communicates with service managers over port 8871. It can connect to any service manager in the instance to control services remotely. Service managers communicate with the server CP to handle events and use the same ports. Let's consider some examples. In the first, we stop the Windows agent in the AWI agent list. AWI communicates with the CP, who issues the instruction to the Windows host service manager, who in turn shuts the agent down. In the second, we start the Windows agent using the Dialog. The agent communicates with the CP via the port defined in its INI settings. The information is passed on to the WP, making the agent part of active operations. It also passes the information to AWI, showing the agent active in the list of agents. Service Manager Communications will also create the Service Manager link.